Welcome to Insight Marketing Success, the podcast where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience, from vision to execution.
Welcome to IMS Inside Marketing Success. Today we have Vince Baiera. Welcome.
Yeah, Vince Baiera. I am the Chief Growth Officer and one of the owners at Home Hop Property Management. I was a ICU nurse by trade for about the first decade of my career at some of the top hospitals in the country, like the Cleveland Clinic and Duke Hospital. I've had startups that I've grown and had success with and sold. I've worked on the business side of healthcare for about a decade through SaaS and technology companies servicing senior living and post-acute care. And I'm now in my third career doing short-term rentals and real estate. So yeah, I've got a few different avenues and learnings to pull from.
Tell us about the path, your education, where you went to school, and then how you got to where you are today.
So I went to Robert Morris University on a full ride for football, and I played wide receiver. And it's a 1AA school out of Pittsburgh, and really enjoyed my time there. It was great for me. I benefited from smaller classrooms, more personalized approach, but it was in the ultimate hospitality business as nursing, and that was a fun journey. So. Yeah, that was a great school to prepare me and not only graduate in 4 years, but pass my boards. And then I jumped right into bedside nursing again at the Cleveland Clinic and Duke Hospital, where I was a staff nurse before doing travel nursing. So that was a fun experience and taught me really how to handle stress. So when someone's stressed about a deadline or stressed about whatever else, and you're like, no, I'll show you stress, is when somebody's trying to die on you and you're working your butt off to keep them alive there in the ICU, that's a different level of stress. So it puts it all in perspective.
So how did you jump from being a nurse to now being the Chief Growth Officer for your company?
I always have been a believer in being a lifelong learner, which I think just is something that innately, can be awoken, but lives in all of us. Because when I got older and started to want to transform what I was doing professionally, I realized that I had to start from the beginning because I didn't have some business expertise. I didn't have a mom or dad that was some successful entrepreneur showing me the way. I really had to start and learn those skills from the very bottom. And luckily, I had a few mentors along the way that did push me in the right direction. And then once I got into that groove of like the personal development, it's been nonstop. So it's going to conferences, listening to talks, going to networking events, raising your hand, asking questions, reading books. I'm a big reader. I never quite understand why, I explain it this way. Somebody will work their whole career and ascend usually to a pretty high level, which is why you decided to buy their book. And they'll write it all down into about 200 pages and hand it to you for about $15. All you got to do is read it.
Right.
And when you start to think like that, like how many people can I outperform by just learning? You start to realize it's a pretty good ROI. And so that's probably the easiest way of how I've been able to take those things, learn new skills, try things, fail forward, keep working on them, and ultimately then come out in more of a leadership and executive role.
All right. So since IMS is an Inside Marketing Success, let's talk about a situation in which you were challenged with marketing, whether it's in your previous jobs or in the current one, a past where you did marketing and it was a home run.
I think so much of marketing is clear communication. And I think the easiest things that I can point to of when things went really well or went really bad was when the communication was very clear and easy to understand, which I know seems so obvious, but I'll give you an example. We at one point were bringing a new product to the market, which was a nurse aid certification program. And this is a way to take somebody off the street, you put them through a course, and at the other end, they become a nursing assistant and help with the staff shortage that our country has. For a long time, we were saying we do nurse aid training. because we're training these people to become nurse aides. But in the customer's mind, they already paid someone else to train their nurses and nurse aides after they had become nurse aides. We were actually delivering something different, which was certification, which came before they got hired and then got their ongoing training. So sometimes just that single word flipped the switch in the customer's mind and made them go, "Oh, you're certifying nurses. You're not just training nurses or nursing assistants." That made all the difference. And when we did make that shift, we saw it take off like gangbusters because it solved such an obvious problem that the market had that it was widely adopted very quickly. And luckily, we had the infrastructure behind us to get that word out there and start closing deals and doing all the stuff.
Okay, just going from training to certification,
Yep.
which was what they wanted, the actual benefit. Okay, awesome. So let's talk about a project in which you thought you were going to receive this much and you received this much, but you learned something.
Yeah. I think the thing that just comes to mind so quickly, and I'll take one step back as I answer this, is I developed a line of home medical equipment called the Step to Bed, which I got patented. We had 8 patents, and again did about 15 million of lifetime sales. And one of the marketing campaigns that we did, we hired an outside firm to help us. And the problem was we misaligned their metrics and goals with what our metrics and goals were. And boy, was that a costly mistake. I had maybe 50 to $80,000 worth of learning on that one, where they were getting paid based on views, and we wanted to pay them based on results.
And
And
sale.
exactly. And at the end of the day, they said, well, shoot, we can help you get more views. And they spent money like crazy, but there wasn't really any mechanism to say, hey, for every dollar you spend, your average cost of a sale, your cost per acquisition, it needs to stay above a certain number or at a certain number, right? And again, so many issues in business come down to communication. That was another one where we thought that the result was going to be really great, but the misalignment with the partner was a big error. And that was a big learning for us. So I think as you get older, unless your campaign is, you swing for the fences, maybe trying to do a comedy ad or some other kind of little off the wall approach, I don't know how easy it is to always say one really worked well versus one really worked poorly, but I do think that relationship and what metrics you're holding each partner accountable for and measuring their success and how they're, spending the dollars, I think is just so crucial.
Totally. Okay, how would you approach storytelling in your brand communications today?
Storytelling is everything. Facts tell, stories sell. I think storytelling is all about painting a picture, helping the customer see themselves not only where they're at, but further along than where they're at. And that's one of the things I think that, with our current brand, Home Hop, we do quite well. Because whenever somebody's looking, just again to back up, what we do is we take single family homes and we turn them into winning Airbnbs, like short-term rentals. And so when somebody's scrolling, you've just got a split second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds for them to go, "Ooh, this one looks nice." So what do you have to do? The title has to be great. The way that you do your hero photos has to be great. The photos themselves has to be great. The design elements that catches their eye have to be really strong. And so all these things help tell the story to the guest of like, what experience are you getting by booking with us? You're going to get a beautiful place. You're going to get a game room. You're going to get a hot tub. You're going to get a sauna. You're going to get a king bed. You're going to have 5 minute walk from here to there, right? It's all those small nuanced pieces that really go back to how to tell the story and even using lifestyle images. So when that girl's booking with her bachelorette party and they see the beautiful house with the pool and the hot tub, they just go, "Ooh, that's what I want. I want me and my girl sitting around with our pink hats and we're ready to go, right? We're having fun together. We're celebrating. It's such a joyous time. This home looks like that's going to deliver for us, right?" And so it's helping that guest see themselves where they're at and further along than even where they're at and where they actually want to be.
Yep. Visualizing the end result. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so what is the biggest trend you see in marketing today?
Again, I alluded to the comedy ad earlier. I think, humor, if done the right way, can really be powerful, especially when you're taking maybe a complex or really personal scenario and trying to make it really fun and lighthearted. Is definitely useful. Obviously, influencer marketing and just storytelling is obviously very powerful today. It's never been more popular. I think using AI and different agents and avatars to go ahead, and I think one of the beautiful things with that approach is it allows you to test a lot of concepts really quickly without breaking the bank, is another trend that we're just seeing skyrocket. And it's challenging as the consumer because you're going, is this real? Like, I know half the stuff I look at now, I'm like, it might be real, but if it's real, it's doctored. It probably is not real. And if it's not real, then the whole thing's doctored. So how can I trust it? We're kind of in this weird place where I kind of feel like that pendulum. Now, let me be clear. AI is not going anywhere. It's only getting worse. It's all that stuff, right? But I do think there's this pendulum that swung that now people are starting to go back to like, I want the real thing. And I think we're going to see that more and more as a bit of fatigue takes part in the market when that trend continues, that so much is not able to be trusted, that it will be the personal words, the personal voice, the real person with, the pimple on their face or their hair a little not perfect or
Yeah.
something else that you go, that's real. This guy, he's got a
Authentic.
stain on his shirt. It must
Yeah,
be real because no one would
yeah,
make that. Right. So I think there's going to be this moment, and I do think we're fastly approaching it where there's going to be fatigue and that real, authentic voice is going to become even more and more powerful because, like most of us, we want to get as much stuff for as little as price as possible. And when you see what some of these AI programs can do, boy, you think, man, I could leverage that all day. But I do think there's going to be an element where it will become a bit overplayed. So it's a trend, but the further out trend is it coming back a little bit more to the center.
yeah. I agree. Authenticity is going to win.
Yep. Yep.
Absolutely. I'm with you. All right.
And just Ricardo, I got to add to that for the group, like in the land of AI and everything can be made up, it makes it really hard to trust the things that you see out there. And I actually think for people who are trying to go, well, what's this going to leave for me? Where do I do? How do I fit in here when I can hit a button and it will spit out all the prompts and spit out all the scripts and spit out all the stuff? Is I think like the individual's ability to communicate. There's a real interesting study done by Carnegie Mellon years ago that says 85% of your professional success comes down to your ability to negotiate, communicate, and lead. 15%, the remainder, technically comes down to your aptitude in that, field. And with AI and so much of knowledge being commoditized, it's going to swing back to those core skills, your ability to communicate, to transmit ideas up the ladder to your team, out to the market, your ability to negotiate and lead and show folks that, hey, you can be that commanding voice. Those are going to be the skills that when the information and knowledge is commoditized, you've got to be stronger at. So just another thing that I kind of feel like is coming down the road. And if I, were a little younger and didn't know which direction to look, I would be focusing my time.
Awesome. All right, Vince, let's talk about the ideal customer for HomeHub. Who will be the ideal customer?
So our business is multifaceted. We have everything focused around short-term rentals. So we have a real estate investment fund where people say, I want to invest in real estate, but I don't really know where to start. I'd rather just write a check and let someone else do the work, knowing I'm in the game, but I don't really have to know or do all the stuff. People can invest with us in our fund. So folks that, want to invest in real estate but don't know where to start, it's a great avenue for them. We have other folks that are high income earners, and we have programs to help them lower their taxable income through investing and owning short-term rentals. We have a program where we help you find it, design it, and manage it, and you get the tax breaks and you own the property. And then we also work with clients who already have that second home or maybe a primary residence. They've moved up, they've graduated to their next property. They still own that other home and they're wondering, do I just put a long-term renter in there? Do I sell it? Or maybe consider doing short-term rentals. So it's definitely somebody who wants to focus on real estate, somebody who maybe wants to utilize some tax savings strategies. But again, a little bit niche with short-term rentals, but definitely, I think well known across the board.
About yourself. You sound very interesting to me. I have done a lot of interviews like this, and you're pretty up there in my top 10%.
Thank you.
So let's assume that you go to a restaurant and you're in one of those booths where you cannot see in front of you or behind you, but you recognize the voices behind you, and they say Vince Baiera, and you realize it's your three best friends, and they are talking about you in a positive manner. What do you hope they say about you?
I think at the end of the day, your relationship capital is your most valuable asset, and the way you make people feel and usually is reciprocated, right? And so what I'd like to hope that people would say about me is like, man, this guy, he was encouraging, he was fun, we had a good time, he made me laugh, he cared, he asked more questions, he was more worried about being interested than being interesting. He actually asked me questions about what was important to me, right? I would want people to, come away from their time with me saying, this guy cared, he really cared. And boy, we had some fun along the way.
Awesome. Great answer. Okay. As you alluded earlier, you were a nurse where you had life and death in your hands. That's a responsibility. Uh, how, let's not go to that level, but today, when things get rough, either a professional or a personal basis or both, how do you ground yourself?
So this is actually a quote that I came up with because years ago I found that like, boy, I was getting stressed all the time. And I
Mhm.
started thinking about like what the stress, wouldn't so much say what it was doing to me, but like I would find that I would become really stressed about something. And then by the time I had a chance to solve it, I actually could solve the problem pretty easily. And I realized that so much of what I was feeling was my mind taking that bad news and running with it, like we all do, right?
Mhm.
So I kind of came up with this saying and mantra, don't worry about anything that you haven't had the chance to solve yet. How often do you get that bad piece of news and you think, oh, this is just going to be the worst? You call up the person, you say, hey, this and that, whatever happened. They go, oh, we just need you to fill out this form and it'll all be fine. Oh, it was just a form. I just needed to sign something. No biggie, right? But
Mhm.
how much stress did it cause you before you learned about that information, right? So I try to remind myself that so many of these things that as long as I have the chance to solve it, usually it resolves relatively easily. And I think, like most people, your emotional intelligence and your ability to process not only difficult news, but challenging circumstances, it's like a bar that just keeps rising, right? Maybe a $5,000 problem today is really stressful. But after you've dealt with like 10 of them, now it's the $20,000 problem that becomes stressful, then the $100,000 problem. Ricardo, you're somebody who owned a business now for 20, 30 years, great success there out of Minneapolis. Talk to me. Would you agree that the $5,000 problem today doesn't even move the needle? You just figure, we'll get to the bottom of it. If you had to put a dollar amount on the threshold of the dollar size problem that moves the needle in your world today, as you've grown professionally, what number would you attribute to it?
100,000.
How much?
100K.
Yeah. And I
Mhm.
would say mine's probably in that 50 range. I've dealt with bigger ones. I've definitely dealt with a lot of smaller ones. 50K starts to make me go like, shit, I gotta have to figure this out. But
Yeah.
again, look at you. Think about when you started. It was probably like making payroll every month was
Yeah.
stressful. But I'm
Yeah.
sure like most business owners, you've had ups and downs, right? It's not always
Yeah.
up and to the right. And
No.
so I just feel like, give yourself some grace because we all start in the same place. And trust me, I look at people that are running big, big companies and I think, boy, that would really be hard. And it's the same with them, right? They didn't start from zero and go up to that. They
Yeah.
started, and the old saying, there's a staircase to the top. There's no shortcuts. There's no elevators. Everyone's got to take the stairs.
All right, Vince. My last question here. What advice would you give yourself if you could, given the wisdom you have today, and you could go and whisper in your ear when you just graduated, what would you tell yourself?
You know, if I had to boil it down to just one thing, it would be hard. Um, and I think partly is because I already have like the work ethic and stuff that luckily that was instilled in me. Sounds bad, but I'll try to combine them, but follow the money. I think our society is so scared about admitting that they want to be rich. I mean, I got out of nursing because I want to be rich, and you can't get rich being a nurse. It's just all there is to it. So I had to start at the bottom, build new skills, learn new things, and follow the money because that's, I think, what's important. And when I say follow the money, I don't mean at all costs be a jerk, at all costs throw people under the bus. I don't mean that. I mean, if usually the money is what makes you happy because it gives you access and the ability to do the things you want. Don't be shy about it. You work for money. All this stuff about you work for your passion, sure, you really should be in a field you're passionate about, but you ultimately clock in and clock out and you trade your time for money. We all do. So just admit it. Say it's okay. I can make more money over here. And I think a lot of us can find pleasure with the people we work with more than even the job we do in a different role. And usually you're a lot happier when that check clears every Friday or whatever it is. So in my career, I followed nursing and I thought I wanted to go into anesthesia and do things like that. Later, I said, look, I think I want to do more of the business side of healthcare. Again, I want to start a business. It wasn't because starting a business is fun. Starting a business is hard, and
Very
it's
hard.
it's it's really not that glamorous, and it can be a very lonely place. But why do you do it? You do it usually because you want to make more money and you can control your own destiny. So I do think there's just something very honest about saying, like, if what you're doing is making you happy and you genuinely don't care about the money, which we'll say maybe 5% of people fall into that bucket. But for the other 95% of people, follow the money, go have fun. Your work's going to always be challenging. Find the good in it, and just try to, live your life. Because at the end of the day, you got to use that money, go do all the other fun stuff that you want to do. And it just helps when you make more of it.
Thank you very much, Vince, for being part of IMS today. Look forward to getting to know you more better and collaborating with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for listening to Insight Marketing Success, where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience from vision to execution.